I said, we had that success. People was talking in the community, who is this Mr. Dawkins type of thing. And that helped me get elected as county
That's
councilor.
good.
And so
Mm-hmm.
about that time is when Mr. Rufus passed away, had a special election. I get elected only because I think because the education piece.
Gotcha.
Uh, but me being in the classroom, and so because that jump started my name in the community, especially
Mm-hmm.
with the white community, the people that didn't know me. People knew my family, of course, knew my mother, knew me, knew I had a good solid foundation base, and that I was, quote unquote, a good kid growing up. But a lot of people in the white community didn't know that much about me until I got to teaching.
Yeah.
Um, so that helped lead to that piece. Was assistant principal for 2 years. COVID hit during my first year. So the first year was cut off short. The second year, we come back. My principal was having a lot of issues, where his wife was having a lot of medical issues. So he was out a lot. But again, that was again how the Lord works. So that thrust me into the principal role a lot of days, and just running school, doing things, supporting teachers. I never complained, never called a DO and said this is this. I just stepped in and did the role. But again, that helped me because those people were speaking for me in the community and to the superintendent. Because the next year, the superintendent moved me to another school for only 2 months, and then he moved me to a principal job mid year.
Mm-hmm.
So I took over my first year, my first school, um, in my fifth year. Well, only after 5 years of going into my sixth year, my superintendent moved me to an elementary school. I was at that elementary school from October until that May, to the end of that May, and then that summer, the superintendent gave me another call and said, "Hey, I want you to go take over the middle school." And I was like, "Are you serious?"
Now let me say this to you, Lyman, because again, this is good stuff, and you gave us a really good detailed description of that. But everything in your path, everything in your journey from upbringing into where you are now, sounds really really great, right? Education was good for you. It put you in spaces that you probably could not have gotten before. But let me just take a side journey and go and maybe play. I don't want to. I hate to use this word, devil's advocate, but maybe some folks who criticize education. I will tell you, even though I'm educated myself, I sometimes have some doubts because everybody's path is not that way. Everybody didn't see education as being this great and wonderful, amazing thing. There are folks who have been educated, did not have the path that you have, and are working at Walmart with
Right.
2 degrees, right? And so for them, education, and there's a lot of controversy out there now that says, is college even valuable? Is going to school even valuable? And those folks have a voice as well. And they want to say, man, that's great for you, Lyman, right? It seems like it worked out well for you. You had parents that were educated people. You became an educated person, city council, now running for mayor. But what do you say to folks on the other side of that who have opinions like some other people have, that education is lost? We don't, the things that we teach kids now in school. And I have a 12-year-old grandson, and I'll ask him, what did you learn in school today? I don't remember that stuff. And he and I have even had a discussion about it. He's been 12 years old. And he's even said, when am I ever going to use this stuff when I get big, when I get older? And so a lot of people don't think that what we teach children is valuable. They don't
Mm-hmm.
think college is valuable anymore. I mean, we're in 2024, man. We have entrepreneurs out here who are making $80,000 a month, right?
Right. Right.
80,000 a month. I know, I follow some of them on social media now who are killing the game and never went to college,
Right.
right? So is college valuable in that sense? I mean, it sounds a great story for you, but what do you speak to those people that say it's not valuable for them, though?
I think college is valuable. 100%. I think college is valuable, but if you have to get if you have to get a degree in a particular field or skill set that's going to
Mhm.
translate. I do think colleges for numbers of years have used other degrees that doesn't necessarily translate to a certain field
Mhm.
um, for money, you know, for gain, for monetary gain. For instance, we're living here in the South. It's no use to go to get a degree in fashion, anything like. What are you going to do with that?
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
not going to translate into you're not going to go to a place that's going to be able to hire you
yeah.
that pays you a wage that's comparable to your time and the money that you spent to get there.
And you don't need a degree to do something in fashion. You
And
don't
you
need a degree for that.
Right. I think Winthrop, if I'm not mistaken, they have something in that nature, or fashion design, or something of that nature. But I think number one, education. Like you were going back to your grandson talking about him being 12. About am I going to use this? I think education, number one, teach you how to. Well, I think it has a number of benefits. Number one, socially, teach you how to operate and deal with different people that's not like you.
Hmm.
How to problem solve, whether that's conflict with people socially, but also how to think from a critical standpoint. But that's also up to the educators to put our students in those situations where they have to think critically, and they'll
Hmm.
learn those skills: how to problem solve, how to think critically, how to do things like that. I think that's the true purpose of education, not necessarily the knowledge that you're going to gain as far as who went to war in 19
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
two and things of that nature. And the same thing with college. A lot of times, college degrees is showing that you can start something and finish something, unless it's a dedicated field like education, or going to be a lawyer, or going to be a doctor, or something like that directly translates to a field.
Yeah. Now
Uh,
let me say this to you. And I don't want to cut you off, but you just made me think of something because the guest yesterday, which was Shamika Rice, your cousin, uh, and I challenged her in a way in this question because I said she's a math teacher, as you know, and
mhm.
all math teachers always will always fight for math. It's like they are so dedicated and loyal to math, right? And you'll say to a math teacher, but math is not that important. And they'll say, oh yes, it is important. You're going to use it in your, but how many times do you know a math student, right, that took say trigonometry or geometry or something? When you get out to be an adult, you don't go to a job interview and somebody asks you to do a trig problem, right? You don't go to a job interview and somebody asks you to do calculus to get the job. So in that essence, it could have been valuable when I was say 12 for me to know how to figure that out. But in the real world, I don't need that. And so I think what you're saying though, that's when it becomes the educator's responsibility to figure out a way to create in that space while they have those kids in that space to create some creativity, to create something in their mind says, okay, I'm never going to probably use trigonometry in my life when I get to be an adult, but maybe I can spark something inside of you that says, hey, you can do this though, right?
Mhm.
It's creating that creativity. But if we continue to have education in this cookie cutter mode of everybody in the seventh grade needs to learn this and everybody in the eighth grade and don't create a space for creativity, we're not really doing education right, or we're not doing school right, I should say. Do you agree with that?
No, I agree with you 100%. You have to bring out that creativity and connect it, and that's where you have to be relevant again, or be responsive,
Yeah.
um, to our kids. But I think a lot of time the reason why our educators um, don't be as creative as they could be is because of pressure of test scores,
Yeah.
uh, and that's those that you know that plays a big part into it because as an educator, especially in the K-12 setting, we're judged by the public, by the state, by the
Mm-hmm.
federal government based on report card scores, based on achievement scores,
Mm-hmm.
and how proficient students are. Not about did you teach them how to think critically today, or did you grow them, or are you building this connection, or if this kid came into your classroom crying, they don't see that.
Yeah.
And the relationship that you built with that kid, they only looking at that one day when they take that end of the year test. So that has a trickle down effect as
Yeah,
well.
that leads me into a question I also had written down here too about these part of education or part of schooling. I keep saying education because let me just say this right here. I don't want people to hear when I say education and schooling, because schooling or public school and the term education are two different things.
Right.
Public school is I have a room full of 20 kids and I sit them all down in a row in a classroom and I make them all learn the same thing at a certain way, at a certain pace. That's public school. Education is I'm educating myself, and I can do that beyond the classroom. I can do that by looking at a YouTube channel or a movie or reading a book, right? So public school and education are two different things. But going back to my point, standardized testing. that is one of the biggest problems I think we have in public schools, because everybody can't learn at that same standard. And you kind of alluded to that. Do you think that testing should be improved, removed, changed? What are your thoughts on that?
I definitely think it needs to be changed, tweaked. I think that you can still test kids, throughout along the way. I think the way that we do it now, the way you do it in the fall, like with iReady or things of that nature, take it in the fall. When you come to school, you take it again in the winter, see your growth. You take it again in August and go from there. But then we're testing kids so much, and like I
Yeah.
said, and it's not just testing; it's high stakes testing. Some states, teachers' salaries are based on that, or
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
based on that. In Atlanta a few years ago, you had teachers and admin that was going to jail
Mm-hmm.
because of the high stakes that were behind that. So I definitely think it needs to be tweaked and changed. And I'm not a big fan of the high stakes testing, but I know people on the other aisle would say, well, you got to have some type of accountability. If not, teachers just being there, just not doing anything.
Yeah.
Uh,
But think about what you just said there for a second though. If I'm a teacher in a public school setting, and I've got this standardized test, and I've got 20 kids, and I got to make sure all 20 of them meet the state requirements of the level that they're supposed to be learning on. And if my check is attached to that, or if my job is attached to that, can you imagine the amount of pressure that a teacher feels when they know that if I don't get these kids to where they need to be, I could lose my job, I could lose my livelihood? So that in itself speaks to me by the fact that why do we have that in a public school setting? That's not going to yield us a good result when it comes to teaching our children. And somebody ought to figure that out. I mean, don't you think so?
no, I agree. It's not conducive, and I think that we're seeing that. South Carolina's been in the bottom 50, no, the bottom 40 of the states for the last 20 plus years of education. And so we're not growing, we're not getting any better. Actually, the scores are going backwards, especially for our brown and black kids. For the last I don't know, 4 decades,
Hmm.
we've been behind, quote unquote, what proficiency is and things of that nature. And I got my own thoughts of that is why. And I think that leads to, not having, people like us, the misters in the
Yeah.
classroom.
Yeah.
Because my kids had success. All kids had success when I was in there. But again, some people on the other aisle say, well, you got, districts like Orangeburg where they have a lot of black educators, but
That's
they're not
true. That's
success
true.
either. Um,
Yeah.
so,
I don't think we can. I don't think we can capsulize it into the fact whether this. Although I agree with having black male teachers or in a classroom is a good thing, but I think we have to look at it, is the teacher itself, the person themselves, are they a good fit? They can
right,
be black, white, Hispanic, Latino, whatever, it doesn't matter. But can that teacher some kind of way come into that classroom and birth within this child some sense of creativity, some sense of inspiration, motivation that makes them want to go beyond just learning trigonometry, that makes them think beyond just the sixth grade and thinking into when they're older, and then giving them those tools, right? That is what needs to be in the classroom. And it doesn't matter what race. I think we're for Mr. because we see that they have the model. But any teacher that can do that, I think it's going to be a successful teacher. I mean, that's what I think school should be. Let me say one more thing, because I want to mention this, because I don't again I want to be respectful of your time. But the history of education, if you look back at Horace Mann, which is called I think he's mentioned as being the father of education. And what people may not understand is that Horace Mann got his model of the public school from a Prussian school system, right? And he saw where these kids were sitting in a row and they were doing things all the same way. They had bells, they had things they had to do. And really, if we look at the history of education, we see that a lot of the rich folks started to come in and started funding money to colleges, the Rockefellers, the Henry T. Fords, because they wanted workers. They didn't want people that could think creatively, I don't know if that's a word, but creatively. They wanted people to just go work in a plant for them. And so
right,
our basis for education started with just getting people in a classroom setting to create people that can work in a plant. And in
right,
a lot of cases, that's the case. And I think that's what a lot of people who have been in school would argue with you about maybe the great experience of education, because I told Shameka this, it's the 40-40 rule. It's like we're putting out people in the school system says you go to work 40 hours a week for 40 years of your life, and then you get to retire, right? And then you retire and you just barely live on your little pension plan. But I just gave you 40 years of my life, though, trying to live the American dream of, oh my God, college is going to change your life. Oh my God, college is going to be this magic
I'll
bullet,
have
fix everything
enough
for
for
me.
that.
Yeah, but it doesn't, right? College is not going to fix everything for us, right? And so we have to become a way that we teach college in a way, and we're getting to college, but K through 12, either one, college has to be a space where we allow students, we allow these people to find their space, find their creativity, and then let them branch out into that. If we're doing the 40-40 rule and we're still doing it that way, like Horace Mann wanted us to do it when he founded education, we are missing it. At least I think so. Anyway.
No, I agree with you totally. I mean, school was created, especially in the U.S., for the industrial complex.
Yeah.
We had these, industrial industries that was being, built. And again, we wanted school to push out workers for those industry, but the world has changed. I mean, you got in the world of AI, in the world with phones and or technology, kids really don't even need to know how to do trigonometry. They just need to know what the basic functions of a calculator is, or how
Mm-hmm.
to, you don't need to know your multiplication
You don't.
because nowhere around you are you without some type of technology that can do that for you. Now, again, as my dad would say, we're putting out people that can't think on their own if this crashes. But in the world, because everything is sped up now,
Yeah.
and nobody's waiting on anything. But we need to teach kids how to utilize AI
Mm-hmm.
for their benefits, how to
Mm-hmm.
either start their own companies or run this type of AI for another company, um, or like you said, produce more life skills,
Mm-hmm.
whether that's financial literacy, whether that's wellness, whether that's entrepreneurship. I think we need more classes like that in school, K
Yeah.
12.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, and you still need some basic English. You still got your basic English. You might still have a math class, but your other things I think, should be more life skill based
Oh, for
uh,
sure. For sure.
classes, and also exposing you to different fields, to different platforms to see what you like. Because a lot of times, and that's another thing, that the way college is set up, you're 18 years old and you're selecting a major that you're going to be doing for the rest of your life for those next 40 years.
Yeah.
Uh, so even you got to choose one at least by your second year when you're 20,
Yeah.
uh, and you're choosing something at 20 years old that's you're going to be doing for the next 40, 45 years of your life. You don't know who you are. You don't know what you like, because I haven't experienced, those things. I don't know if I like it or not. I can see that, and a perfect example for me was, my grandmother was a nurse, and my mom was sick, so I thought I wanted to be a nurse. So I go
Mm-hmm.
into nursing school and start getting them. I'm like, but I have no passion for this.
Right.
I'm not part of this, so I don't want to go to
Right.
nursing school.
Right.
They make good money, but I don't want to be a nurse.
Yeah.
And and so you end up having kids that's chasing money, but they
Mm-hmm.
hate what they do every day.
Mm-hmm.
And you
Yeah.
get into so I think education again has its purpose, but we have to tweak it. We cannot.
Yeah.
We're still the same model that we were back in Horace Mann, and however many years that was, and
That
nobody
was
does.
that was 1800s, man. That was in the 1800s when he set out to develop the first public school education system in America. I mean, 1800s, and we haven't deviated from the same, in a lot of ways, have not deviated from the same system of lining up in a row, making them hear a bell. All that's factory mindset. That was to train them that to be on time to go to work. That was to train them that when you hear a bell or a
Go to
whistle factory, you're supposed to go to work. All that was part of that training. And we in 2024 have not figured out that we've got to change that. You alluded to what we should be teaching in classrooms. Man, I would love to have a class. We talked about how to invest in stocks,
there
right?
you go.
How to purchase a home, how to understand my credit scores. I mean, what are classes about how to start a business or how to become creative in my own space? That's what we should be teaching in college, and not the same mundane information that most college students feel like I'm not going to use this stuff when I graduate anyway. Most of them forget it by the time they graduate. So
Now, look at China. I mean, a lot of time with them, the kids are, I think, kindergarten up to third grade. They don't do any type of academic work. They're doing life skill type of things. They're teaching them how to
yeah,
clean, how to take care of each other. They're teaching their kids how to be a good human and how to take care of different things at an early on age. Then we'll get to some of the academic. We do some of the basic academic type of things. Um,
yeah,
and so, no matter what models you choose, I think you have to change up the model.
yeah.
Um,
And that's where the Mr. and that's where the Misters come in. That's where people like the Mr. brand comes in, because we go, they go into, I say we because I'm a part of it as well. We go into the classroom and we spin on a dime and say, okay, we're going to change things up. We're going to change. That's part of what the Mr. brand is about, the change agent, right? And so we go in the room and do that and make it where it's something that the student can use. I mean, I just saw Dr. Anderson do a documentary about the Call Mr. program, and he has students that is come under his tutelage who are not going to be engineers and doctors, and they've been to college and they didn't stay in teaching. They went on and developed other things that they felt passionate about doing, and that's the things that we got to do for us, for our students. We've got to find that passion that burns within them, and as educators, we have to figure out what that is and push them in that direction. And maybe it even starts at 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, but we got to find that way to do that. So anyway, we are right at about an hour, bro. If you can almost believe it, we're like right 50 minutes. I mean, it seems like we probably could talk about this forever, and I really have enjoyed it so far. But let me just kind of see if I can capitalize some of this. So you know that a lot of teachers are leaving the profession. What are some of the reasons that you think they are doing that? What are some of the problems? And then I have one more final question. Then I'll let you go. But what do you think some of the reasons that they're leaving the classroom?
I would say teachers always leave because of the environment or the experience that they're having. A lot of times, right now the big focus is on money.
Mm-hmm.
But I think people will stay somewhere if they're happy, if
Mm-hmm.
they're enjoying it. So I think it's the environment, again, the high stakes that are being pushed down from the state to the school districts, from the school district to the principals, to the principals to the teachers. So you have a lot of times you have principals that's micromanaging, that's very tough on kids. I mean, on teachers that's not empathetic. So you got a lot of them that just want to go. They would rather go deal with something else. But also, society has changed so much, and
Mm-hmm.
especially in the short time since COVID, man, it seems like kids don't have those same values even more. And the parents don't have the same values, man. You
Yeah.
got me being a principal, so I get to deal with the parents and the kids, and I see it for myself. I mean, a lot of these kids are very much more disrespectful than they
Mm.
were just
Mm-hmm.
5 years ago, 10 years ago. And then when the parents come in, I see why. You know, this is disrespectful, not even more.
Yeah.
Uh, and I do think it because we're at a generation where you don't have the grandmothers
Mm.
raising kids, walking around, taking everybody to church on Sunday. The church is dwindling down even more, and I think we're seeing some of the effects of that. Those family values, those core
Yeah.
values, are not there anymore, and a lot of teachers said they're not going to deal with it
Yeah.
uh, anymore. It's not worth it to have to come in and do
Mm-mm.
all this. So that's you're going to be far few in between that you find someone that's very passionate about really being in the classroom, dealing with some of the things that you deal with. Another thing, education has been underfunded for the last 40 years. I know in South Carolina they've never fully funded education, so a lot of times you don't have the resources
Mm-hmm.
uh, that you need. So you're asking me to do X, Y, and Z, but you're not giving me the tools, the resources, the training to do those type of things. And then again, but you're asking and you're approaching it the same way. Again, people are not thinking outside of the box. People are not
Mm.
being creative. We're doing the same Monday things, but you're asking for different results, and a lot of people are getting tired of it.
I had a guest talking to someone, and she told me that she was in a classroom where a student literally threw a desk at her in the classroom. And so that's what you mean by, and we talked about that too. That's what you mean by teachers are called upon to do and live in those kind of environments and not be respected, not be given the pay that they deserve. And again, it's getting better, but like you said, it hasn't been funded in over 40 years though. And so you can't expect these people to stay in that situation and not, unless they have, like you said, that passion says, I'm not here for the money. I'm not here for that. And I can handle a kid who throws a chair at me, right? I can handle all that. And I'm willing to accept that. But long gone are the days, and we have people who are willing to do that in a lot of ways. And again, society and the way we're raising our kids and the way we're allowing them to, and then mental health. We probably should talk about that as well too, because mental health
Yeah,
has a lot to do with it too. A lot of these kids are just not stable. They're coming from very difficult backgrounds, and so that has a lot to do with it too. So listen, man, given all of the stuff that we have, and we can talk about it forever, but given all of that stuff, that is why we have to figure out what are the specific things that we can do inside these classrooms to bring out the best in these new evolving students that we have in 2024? And that's going to be a task that we will probably be facing for the next 5, 10, 15 years. But again, this was just a space for us to come on and just kind of just chit chat about it and talk about it. So maybe someone will hear this and say, man, that makes me think about an idea I can do in my classroom or something. So last question, and this is just basically just a general question of any last thoughts that you would want to say about the state of education and what you think you would do or any teacher could do, or just any advice or suggestions, anything general that you want to say about the education system as a whole?
No, I'll just give some encouraging words to if there is a teacher that sees this that's maybe thinking about, giving up, wanting to get out of education, things of that nature, that just to keep going. I know it's tough,
Mm-hmm.
and anything that's tough is worth having if you want to work hard for it. Nothing that's worth having is going to be easy.
Yeah.
It's going to be tough. Keep going. You might not find your right school. You might not find your right principal to work up under. But somebody's out there, and the reason I say keep going, because some kid is waiting for you to make an impact in their life. There's a Frederick somewhere. There's a Lyman somewhere. We all can recall that one person or that one teacher throughout our K-12 experience that have an impact on us, that did get through to us, that was different. And that teacher can be that person. And I think, education has a lot of flaws.
Yeah.
As I go back to what I said earlier, there is a purpose still for education, and we need education. We need to have an educated society, especially for our brown and black people. That is a gateway, it's an outlet to get out of some of the situations and the
Yeah.
upbringings that we're in, and that's one way that we can get out. Everybody's is not 6'8". Everybody can't run a ball, can't throw a ball, or run real
Sure.
fast.
Sure.
Uh, but a lot more of us can think and
Yeah.
uh, and can provide for ourselves and our family and break some generational curses through
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah.
So,
And let me end with that. After, I guess end with this statement after you finish yours. Um, there was again, I hate keep referring to Shamika, but she was such a good guest yesterday. She talked about how when she was coming up in school and how she had a different upbringing. She lived in the projects and it was tough for her family, and how she watched drug deals and she watched all the stuff going in Gaffney right in her neighborhood, right? And she talked about how tough that was coming up as a child. And she made this pretty profound statement. She said, "But when I went to school, school was my safe space."
mm,
Right. And so, along with your encouragement, is that a lot of kids, a lot of children come to school for a safe space. They come to school hungry. They come to school dirty. They come to school coming out of very traumatic domestic situations. And somebody's got to be there to put a smile on their face and say, hey, baby, it's okay. I'm not saying that education is perfect. God knows it's not, right? It has its flaws and we could tweak and do better. But if nothing else, at least through the K through 12 experience, somebody's got to be there to smile and say, you know what? You're going to have a great day today, and give that child some sense of creativity, some sense of belonging, some sense of inspiration and motivation to make them want to be a better person. I think that's what the core of education has to be, in my opinion. So,
no, you're spot on, and it has to do that, and it has to change, because you got more kids that are going through situations like that nowadays
yeah,
than the latter of my experience, where you have a good upbringing, two people in the house, and things of that nature. So you're spot
yeah,
on.
yeah, yeah, yeah. All right. Good conversation, man. I appreciate you, brother. I really do.
Appreciate you
Um,
doing, man. Keep going.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right. With that, folks, we're going to end it. This is the end of another edition of The Educator's Voice. If you are an educator and you happen to be listening to this and you want to subscribe or hit like and notify, please do so. And if you want to be on the show, if you have something that you want to contribute to The Educator's Voice, please let me know and I'd be happy to have you on the show. Until next time, peace.
Peace.